Lucas Bennett had built an empire from nothing, one sleepless night at a time, one risk after another, one painful sacrifice stacked onto the next. Yet for all his sharp instincts and business victories, he still felt utterly powerless when it came to raising his own son, Noah, after the tragic loss of his wife 2 years earlier, a wound that time softened but never fully healed. And although Lucas had more money than he could spend in a lifetime, every nanny he hired left within weeks, unable to handle the pressure of working for a perfectionist who loved his son more fiercely than he could express, and so, in a desperate attempt to maintain stability at home, he relied on Maria, the quiet, gentle housekeeper who had been with the family since before Noah was born, a woman who never complained, never asked for anything, and never expected Lucas to notice how much extra effort she put in, though she cared for Noah as if he were her own grandson. On one particular day, a day that would change Lucas's life forever, he returned home much earlier than usual, exhausted from a meeting that had gone nowhere and frustrated with a world that refused to cooperate, his mind swirling with numbers and deadlines as he loosened his tie while walking through the hall, when he heard faint splashing coming from the kitchen, a soft giggle mixed with a woman's warm voice, and something inside him froze, a father's instinct rising like a flare as he stepped toward the sound, because Noah should have been napping, and the nanny he'd hired just 3 days earlier was nowhere to be found. His pace quickened, and the moment he entered the kitchen, he stopped dead in his tracks at the sight before him, Maria standing at the sink, sleeves rolled up, carefully supporting Noah as the baby sat happily in warm water inside the kitchen basin, little hands slapping the bubbles while sunlight poured in through the large window behind them, making the scene look like something out of a memory he had once cherished with his late wife. But for a man who'd been running his home like a fortress, controlling every detail in fear of losing something precious again, this unexpected sight triggered panic instead of calm, and his voice burst out before he could stop it. "Maria, what are you doing? Who told you to bathe him in the sink?" A tone that made Maria instantly stiffen, though she did not look afraid, only sad, as she gently rinsed Noah's shoulders with warm water and whispered soothingly to keep him calm before turning her eyes toward Lucas, eyes that carried more wisdom than he'd ever bothered to see. And when she finally spoke, her voice was steady yet soft, the voice of a woman who had carried burdens far heavier than his judgment. "Sir, the nanny you hired left this morning without warning." Noah was crying, feverish, sweaty, and sticky from vomiting, so I wiped him down, gave him water, and when he started feeling warm again, I bathed him myself because I couldn't let him stay uncomfortable. I know it was not my job, but the child needed care, and there was no one else here. Lucas felt the words hit him like a wave, shame mixing with confusion, because he'd been so consumed with work and grief that he hadn't noticed the nanny leaving, hadn't checked the security alerts, hadn't even looked at his son's nanny cam notifications. He opened his mouth to respond, but the anger he thought he felt dissolved when Noah squealed, splashing joyfully, reaching tiny arms toward Maria with unconditional trust. And Lucas realized something he had been blind to: his son smiled more in this moment than he had in weeks. And it wasn't because of money or professionals or carefully arranged schedules, it was because someone actually cared. The tension in his chest loosened, and memories flooded him, his late wife Emily laughing as she gave Noah his first bath in this very sink, insisting that the kitchen is the heart of the home. And now, standing there, Lucas understood why the scene before him hurt so deeply. It reminded him of everything he'd been trying not to feel before he could speak again. Maria continued, "I'm sorry if I crossed a line, Mr. Bennett, truly. I know my place. I only did what any mother would do for a child." And Lucas, who had been called CEO, billionaire, genius, visionary, and so many other powerful titles, found himself speechless for the first time in weeks, because the truth was painful and simple. He had tried to replace human care with money, but what Noah needed was love, warmth, and presence. Slowly, Lucas stepped closer to the sink, the sound of water running steady as he reached out and touched Noah's little arm, feeling its warmth. Realizing just how long it had been since he held his child without rushing off somewhere, and the guilt almost broke him, but Maria's gentle nod told him she wasn't judging, she was only helping. "Maria," he finally said, his voice much quieter now, I didn't know he was sick. Why didn't you call me?" And Maria replied with a faint, tired smile, "Sir, you had an important investor flight this morning, and every time I've called you before, your assistant answered instead and told me to message the nanny directly. I didn't want to burden you again, I just did what needed to be done." Her humility stung Lucas more deeply than anger ever could have. He had created a system that kept the people closest to him at arm's length, leaving Noah emotionally stranded, and Maria silently picking up the broken pieces. He looked at her again, not as an employee, but as a woman who had quietly saved his son from discomfort and cared for him more than he realized, and he felt something shift inside him. Something he had buried beneath work, gratitude mixed with grief, and a longing to be the kind of father Emily would have wanted him to be. Noah suddenly splashed water onto Lucas's shirt, breaking the tension, making Maria chuckle softly, and without thinking, Lucas laughed too, his first genuine laugh in what felt like ages, and in that moment, he knew everything had to change. After drying Noah and helping Maria prepare a bottle, Lucas sat at the kitchen island and asked her to tell him everything. How Noah behaved during the day, how he slept, what he liked, what scared him. And Maria spoke with such detail and affection that Lucas realized she knew his son better than he did, not because she intended to replace him, but because she'd been present when he wasn't. When she finished, he took a long breath and said, "Maria, I've been unfair to you. And to Noah. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep pretending money replaces being here." Maria shook her head gently and said, "You're doing your best, sir. You love him. I see it every day, you just carry too much alone," and her simple words cracked open the guilt he'd been shielding himself from. Lucas stood, walked to Noah's nursery, and held his son for nearly an hour, promising himself that he would never again let his fear of loss stop him from loving what he still had. Later that evening, Lucas sat with Maria at the dining table, something he'd never done before, and offered her a raise, not for the work she did, but for the emotional labor she had silently carried. But Maria shook her head and said, "All I want is to stay and help the baby. Money is not my reason," and Lucas understood that loyalty like hers couldn't be bought, it had to be respected. From that day forward, Lucas rearranged his schedule, brought Noah to his office twice a week, canceled unnecessary meetings, and learned how to feed, bathe, and play with his son without relying entirely on staff. He fired 3 agencies who had sent unqualified nannies and instead set up medical training for Maria to support her with confidence and safety. The house slowly began to feel alive again, not like a museum filled with silent grief, but like a home filled with laughter and warmth. And though Lucas still missed Emily every single day, he knew she would have been proud of the man he was becoming, not just a millionaire, not just a businessman, but a father who finally understood what mattered most. And as their small family grew closer, Lucas realized that sometimes the people who save your life are the ones you overlook at first, and that love, in all its quiet forms, can heal even the deepest wounds.